The Smoky Mountains do not give things back. Not easily. Not without a price. It was late October when two hikers, Michael and Dana Clark, strayed from the marked path. They weren't thrill seekers. They weren't chasing danger. They just wanted silence. The kind you can only find when the world is smothered in fog and the air smells like pine and rain-soaked earth. But that day, silence followed them like a warning. At first, it was just a flicker in the corner of Michael's vision. Something jammed deep between two jagged slabs of rock. He thought it was nothing. A tree branch. A scrap of old fabric. Until Dana said, "Wait, look at that." He crouched, fingers brushing cold stone, and pulled. A backpack. Faded. Weather-beaten. The strap stiff from years of rain and snow. Inside, a sketchbook. Michael flipped it open and froze. The drawings were simple, childlike. One page after another of mountains, rivers, crooked trees. And then, at the very back, a crude map. But it wasn't like any map they'd seen. "Michael," Dana's voice trembled. "What is this?" He turned the page. A note, in blocky, desperate handwriting. "Follow the water." And beneath it, two names. Tom Rourke, Lily Rourke. The hikers didn't know it yet, but this was the first thread of a story that had haunted the Smokies for 5 years. The father who vanished, the daughter who vanished with him, and the brother who never stopped looking. Tom Rourke wasn't supposed to be a mystery. He was the kind of man people noticed for his steadiness, not his storms. A high school physics teacher, widowed 3 years ago when his wife, Anna, lost her battle with cancer. Since then, it had just been him and Lily, 8 years old, sharp as a tack, a laugh that could split the darkest room in half. Neighbors would see them on their porch some evenings. Tom, tired-eyed but smiling, Lily perched beside him, drawing pictures of all the places we'll go. That trip to the Smokies? It was supposed to be one of those places. Just a weekend. Tom told his brother Daniel over the phone. "Clear my head. Give Lily something good." Daniel didn't argue. He knew what Tom had been carrying. The guilt, the loneliness, the way he sometimes stared at Lily like he was terrified of failing her. If only Daniel had known that phone call would be the last time he'd ever hear his brother's voice. The sun hadn't even fully breached the horizon when Tom zipped Lily's jacket to her chin. "Cold?" he asked. Lily shook her head, her breath fogging in the crisp mountain air. "Nope, feels like adventure weather." Tom smiled at that. An actual unguarded smile, and Daniel would later cling to that description like a lifeline when rangers recounted it. Adventure weather. The campsite was still. A thin layer of frost clung to their tent, their cooler, their boots left outside overnight. Tom poured 2 cups of cocoa from his thermos, handing one to Lily. "Okay," he said. "Big day. Ready to see the waterfall." Lily grinned. "Race you." It was supposed to be that simple. They left their campsite at 8:12 a.m. according to the ranger's log. Clear trail. Good weather. No storms on the radar. But in the Smokies, a clear trail can turn on you faster than you can blink. The last person to see them alive was a woman named Carla Jenkins. She was hiking with her dog when she passed them near a fork in the trail. "I remember the girl," Carla later told investigators. "She had this bright red scarf, stood out like a flare against the trees. She waved at me. And Tom? He looked tired, not in a dangerous way, just heavy, like he had a lot on his mind." Carla said she warned them, "Don't take the lower trail. It's slick this time of year." Tom nodded, thanked her. Then he and Lily vanished into the trees. By noon, a fog rolled in, fast and thick, swallowing the path in a way only the Smokies can. Carla never saw them again. At 6:45 p.m., their campsite was untouched. No fire, no dinner, no sound but the wind scraping through bare branches. By 8 p.m., a park ranger was notified. By 10 p.m., Daniel Rourke's phone rang. "Missing?" he repeated, standing barefoot in his kitchen, staring at the floor as if the word itself didn't make sense. "No, that's not. Tom doesn't just go missing. He's probably just..." The silence on the other end told him otherwise. By midnight, the first search party was already combing the trails with flashlights. They found nothing. Search and rescue SAR teams launched at sunrise. Drones, dogs, volunteers. Over 400 square miles of dense, punishing terrain. They found boot prints that matched Tom's size near a creek bed. They found fragments of small footprints. Lilies beside them. Then they just stopped, as if the forest had swallowed them whole. "We should have found something," SAR Commander Jeff Hollis said later. "A dropped glove, piece of fabric, anything." It was like they'd just stepped off the earth. And in a way, they had. By day 3, news crews swarmed the trailheads. Father and daughter missing in Smokies. Reporters grilled Daniel. "Do you think he planned this? Do you think he wanted to disappear?" "No," Daniel snapped. "Tom's not, he wouldn't. But grief is a dangerous mirror." Some pointed to the map later found in Tom's pack. Others whispered about Tom's depression after Anna's death. Maybe he just walked out there and didn't come back. One anonymous ranger told a reporter. "Some people, they don't want to be found." Daniel refused to believe it. He would drive to the ranger station every morning and plant himself in the corner, poring over maps, arguing with anyone who tried to slow the search down. "This isn't over," he kept saying. "We just haven't looked in the right place." But as the days stretched into weeks, the Smokies kept their secret. After 21 days, the official search ended. Winter was closing in. Snow was coming. Daniel didn't care. He bought his own gear, his own maps. He hiked until his feet bled and his hands cracked open from the cold. Sometimes, at night, he swore he heard Lily's laughter on the wind. "Grief does that," the SAR commander would say later. "The mountains get inside your head." But Daniel didn't stop. He couldn't, because he knew one thing the mountains didn't. He wasn't going to leave his brother and niece out there. By December, the Smokies were buried under snow. The rangers shut down the official search. They cited budget, weather, diminishing returns. But Daniel didn't hear any of it. He stood at the ranger station counter with a stack of maps so worn the folds were splitting. "You don't understand," he said, his voice raw. "They're out there. I know it." The ranger sighed. "Mr. Rourke, I'm sorry, but if they were out there, we'd have found them by now." Daniel's jaw clenched. He didn't argue. He just turned, walked out, and bought snow gear with money he didn't have. If the mountain wanted to keep it secret, it was going to have to fight him for it. The first lead came from a hiker named Greg Moss. He was out snowshoeing near Alum Cave Trail when he spotted something red in the snow. "I thought it was blood," Greg later told local news. Turned out it was fabric, like part of a scarf. Daniel's heart stopped when he heard. He drove through a blizzard that night. The scarf turned out to be a faded bandana, half buried in ice. Not Lily's, not even close. But Daniel didn't care, because the bandana was proof of something else. Things get lost in the Smokies. They don't always come back. And if something of Lily's was still out there, he'd find it. 2 months later, another lead emerged. A trail runner claimed he'd seen a little girl peering from the window of an abandoned ranger cabin near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. She was pale, he told deputies. Long hair, staring right at me. They investigated. The cabin was empty. No footprints. No girl. Just a single thing that made Daniel's blood run cold. On the dusty table inside that cabin was a small drawing. A stick figure. A man. A child. And between them, a mountain. No one could say for sure if it was Lily's. But Daniel recognized the handwriting at the bottom. One word, scrawled in shaky letters, Dad. Years passed. Daniel stopped showing up to family holidays. He sold his house, moved to Gatlinburg, closer to the trailheads. He became that guy, the one locals whispered about. Still looking for his brother and niece, they'd say at diners. Poor bastard. But Daniel didn't care. Every weekend he hiked. Every weekend he pinned new markers to the wall of his rented cabin. Red strings connecting sightings, rumors, and scraps of evidence that never added up. And the whole time, one question gnawed at him. If they died out there, where were their bodies? 5 years in, Daniel's map looked less like a search grid and more like an obsession carved in ink and string. And that's when it happened. A pair of hikers, tourists from Ohio, wandered off-trail near chimney tops and found something lodged in a rock crevice. At first, they thought it was trash. Then they realized it wasn't. They called it in. Rangers sealed the area. When Daniel heard the news, he drove to the trailhead in under an hour. They said I couldn't go up, he told a reporter later. I didn't listen. I hiked straight past the tape. What he saw changed everything. The Smokies had kept their silence for 5 years. But on an unseasonably cold March morning, the mountain finally spoke. Daniel's breath tore from his chest in ragged bursts as he scrambled over boulders slick with moss and ice. The ranger's warning tape fluttered uselessly in the wind. He didn't care. He ducked beneath it, hands trembling, boots scraping rock, until he stood before the narrow slit in the mountain where the hikers had made their discovery. First, he didn't see it. Then, there, wedged deep into the stone like the mountain had swallowed it whole. A hiking boot, faded, weather-worn, the laces stiff from years of exposure. And inside the boot, trapped like a secret the wilderness didn't want to share, was a strip of pink fabric. Daniel's throat closed. Lily's scarf. The ranger on duty reached for his radio. Mr. Rourke, you need to step back. This is an active scene. But Daniel wasn't listening. He reached into the crevice, fingers clawing at the stone until his nails split. He pulled. The boot didn't move. The mountain wouldn't give it up. A ranger grabbed his arm. Daniel turned on him, wild-eyed. That's hers. That's my niece's scarf. You understand me? The ranger hesitated. He'd been here long enough to know what obsession looked like. But he'd also seen something else in Daniel's eyes. Certainty. They cut the boot free. The boot was old, but the fabric was recent. 2, maybe 3 years, the lab tech said. Certainly not 5. Daniel's chest seized. Are you telling me? The tech raised a hand. I'm not telling you anything, Mr. Rourke, but if I were you, I'd keep looking. It wasn't long before Daniel found it. The crevice wasn't just a crack. It was an entrance. Hidden by brush and shadow, a narrow fissure split into a hollow chamber. Rangers had missed it during the initial search. It was too well concealed, too deep in the rocks. Daniel stood at the mouth of the cave, flashlight trembling in his hand. Inside, the air was damp and cold enough to bite, and carved into the stone wall, faint and uneven, were letters, D+L. He pressed his hand to the carving. David, he whispered, and Lily, they'd been here. Near the back of the cave, Daniel's light caught something else, a stack of small stones, arranged deliberately, a cairn. At its base lay a child's hair clip, pink, Lily's favorite color. Daniel's knees gave out. He wasn't sure if he was praying or cursing, but the sound that came out of him was raw enough to echo through the cavern until it didn't sound human at all. The cave changed everything. If Lily's scarf and clip were recent, then someone or something had been there. Maybe they'd been alive far longer than anyone thought possible. Or maybe they hadn't been alone in the Smokies. And for the first time, Daniel realized the mountain wasn't indifferent. It was watching. The Smokies don't give up their dead. Not easily. But when they finally do, the truth doesn't come quietly. The cave changed everything. Daniel wasn't alone anymore. The park rangers organized a new sweep, this time with specialized caving teams and forensic analysts. Drones buzzed over the ridges. Cadaver dogs sniffed the air where even the wind seemed afraid to move. For the first time in 5 years, the case file stamped cold was reopened. Daniel didn't leave the site. He set up camp at the trailhead like he was tethered to the mountain itself. Every night he stared at the jagged silhouette of the ridge where Lily's scarf had been found. Dad always said the Smokies were alive, he whispered once, holding the scarf tight in his hand. And if you're alive, then you owe me an answer. On the 4th day, a caver named Torres spotted it. Not far from the original cave was a second opening, smaller, almost invisible behind a curtain of vines. The team widened the entrance and slid in one by one, their headlamps carving narrow beams through the darkness. The passage was tight, claustrophobic, the kind of place you had to crawl through on your belly, stones scraping your shoulders, air sharp with damp mineral cold. And then the passage widened. Torres called out first, "Over here!" They all crowded into the chamber. Against the far wall, half buried under loose rock, was a figure. It was David, or what was left of him. The rangers moved carefully, their hands steady but their faces pale. His body had been preserved unnaturally well by the cave's cold, dry air. One hand was outstretched, frozen mid-reach toward a gap in the stone. And clenched in his fist was something even stranger. A torn page from Lily's sketchbook, a crude drawing of a cabin. Daniel's chest constricted. He pressed his palm against the cold cave wall and whispered, "Where were you trying to take her, David?" The sketch changed everything. Back at the ranger station, a map analysis confirmed something odd. There were no cabins marked in the sector David had drawn. Not old, not abandoned, not even historical ruins. But Torres, who grew up in the Smokies, swore he'd heard stories. Hunters used to talk about it, he said. A cabin up in the rocks. No one knew who built it. They just stopped finding it one day. Daniel stared at the sketch until the lines blurred. If there was even a chance, he had to follow it. The search for the cabin started at dawn. Rain hammered the slopes, turning the trails into rivers of mud. But Daniel didn't stop. He pushed higher, past the marked paths, past the search zones the rangers had combed 5 years ago. By dusk, the wind howled like an animal. The Smokies swallowed light faster than it should have, night falling like a trap. And then, through the trees, he saw it. A roof, tilted, sunken, half hidden by the forest like it didn't want to be found. The cabin. Daniel's flashlight swept through the dark. Dust, rot, broken furniture collapsed in on itself. But the deeper he went, the stranger it became. In the far corner was a small bed. The sheets were neat, too neat, and on the pillow, a child's stuffed rabbit. Daniel's breath caught. It was Lily's. He remembered buying it for her on her 8th birthday. But it was clean, as if someone had been taking care of it. Then Daniel saw the walls. Scratched into the wood in a child's uneven handwriting were words. "Dad went out. Back soon." And beneath it, smaller, shakier, "Don't let them find me." Daniel staggered back. His hand trembled against the wood. For 5 years, Lily had been here, hidden. And David had died trying to protect her. The forensic team confirmed it. Tiny bones, animal bones, were buried behind the cabin. Someone had been hunting small game. There were signs of fire, crude tools. Lily had survived here. But then, 2 years ago, the signs stopped. They never found her body. Just her scarf. Just her hair clip. Just enough to know she'd been here. And then, like the mountain itself had taken her, she was gone. The mountain never truly gives you closure. It gives you fragments, and it dares you to make sense of them. The town gathered on a cold Sunday morning. Daniel stood at the front of the small church, Lily's scarf folded carefully in his hands. There was no coffin, only an empty space that felt heavier than any grave. The pastor spoke gently, but Daniel didn't hear the words. He stared at the scarf. He thought of the cabin. He thought of the words scratched into the wall. "Don't let them find me." His hands trembled. Was she scared of them? Or of him? The question burned. The media called it the Smoky Mountain Enigma. Reporters circled Daniel's house like vultures, asking the same questions over and over. Do you believe she's still out there? What do you think your brother was hiding? Why would Lily write that message? He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because late at night, when the world was quiet, he'd replay every memory of David. His laugh, his protective way with Lily, and that look in his eyes 5 years ago when he'd said, "Trust me." What had he been trying to keep safe? The rangers sealed the site. Too dangerous, they said. Too unstable. But Daniel went anyway. Every month, without fail, he climbed back to that ridge, past the cave, past the scarred trees. He would stand in the doorway of the cabin, breathing in the smell of damp earth and old wood. He talked to her there. Lily, if you're listening, I'm not done. Because in his heart, the cabin wasn't just a ruin. It was a monument, a marker for a truth no one had the courage to face. 6 months later, a ranger brought him something. It was a weathered tin box found under one of the cabin's floorboards during a follow-up survey. Inside was a single drawing. Lily's hand, he'd know it anywhere. It showed her and David, standing together, smiling, and behind them the mountain. But in the corner of the drawing, barely visible, was another figure. A shadow. Watching them, Daniel stared at it for a long time, his throat tight. And then he said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. She wasn't hiding from David. She was hiding with him from someone else. Because late at night, when the world was quiet, he'd replay every memory of David. His laugh, his protective way with Lily, and that look in his eyes 5 years ago when he'd said, "Trust me." What had he been trying to keep safe? The rangers sealed the site. Too dangerous, they said. Too unstable. But Daniel went anyway. Every month, without fail, he climbed back to that ridge, past the cave, past the scarred trees. He would stand in the doorway of the cabin, breathing in the smell of damp earth and old wood. He talked to her there. Lily, if you're listening, I'm not done. Because in his heart, the cabin wasn't just a ruin. It was a monument, a marker for a truth no one had the courage to face. 6 months later, a ranger brought him something. It was a weathered tin box found under one of the cabin's floorboards during a follow-up survey. Inside was a single drawing. Lily's hand, he'd know it anywhere. It showed her and David, standing together, smiling, and behind them the mountain. But in the corner of the drawing, barely visible, was another figure. A shadow. Watching them, Daniel stared at it for a long time, his throat tight. And then he said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. She wasn't hiding from David. She was hiding with him from someone else. The Smokies went quiet again. Tourists came and went. Trails reopened. News stations moved on to the next story. But for Daniel, time didn't move. He still hikes the ridge every year on the anniversary. He still stands in front of that cabin, scarf in hand, staring at the door like he's waiting for it to creak open. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, he swears he hears a laugh. Light, small, lilies. If you ever hike the backcountry trails of the Smoky Mountains and you find yourself deep enough, far from the tourists, far from the maps, stop for a moment. Listen. You might hear it too. The faint sound of a child laughing, carried by the wind through the trees. And if you do, don't follow it. Because the mountain doesn't like to give back what it takes. To this day, neither Lily's body nor any trace of her has ever been found. Some say she's gone. Others aren't so sure. After hearing what really happened in the Smoky Mountains, do you think the hikers should have reported what they found sooner? Or do you believe it wouldn't have changed anything? Share your thoughts. I'm reading every single comment.